Chapter 7 The Seventh Seal, the First Woe. When Jesus opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour, in Revelation 8:1. The continuous sound of praise to God in heaven from the angels and the elders in Revelation 4:8-11 has ceased very briefly, creating a sense of solemnity and awe at God's wrath that will be vented upon the earth and its inhabitants as the Great Tribulation draws to a close. This pause also makes us consider the extent and the enormity of what God is about to do. It creates dramatic tension, underpinning that it is the close of this age, affecting the whole earth and every person on it, and paving the way for what is to come, outlined in Revelation 20-22. At this point, an offering is made to God of incense and all the prayers of his people. They are in a censer, which is a container for burning incense, in Revelation 8:3-4. Incense in the Bible symbolizes the worship of God as part of a covenant relationship with him. It was burned in the temple in Jerusalem by the high priest twice each day, for example, as shown in Exodus 30:7-8. It is a symbol of the sacred connection between God and his people, of awe, reverence, and adoration from those who love him, both individually and as a group, as shown by the words of King David in Psalm 141:2. These prayers, therefore, will be prayers of love and adoration of God, as well as pleas for justice to be done. As an indication that God has accepted the incense and prayers that have been offered to him, the now empty censer is filled with fire from the altar and thrown down to earth by an angel, causing peals of thunder, rumblings, flashes of lightning, and an earthquake. This is the signal that the wrath of God is imminent in Revelation 8:5. There are a number of angels who administer God's wrath on his behalf, and John has already seen 7 angels who stand before God, and 7 trumpets were given to them in Revelation 8:2. God's wrath then begins. The descriptions of God's wrath start with Revelation 8:6, and they continue into Revelation 9:11, 15, and 16. The structure of them is complex, but the key to understanding them is that the overall structure is made up of 3 woes. The word woe in this context means distress and wretchedness. The 3 woes are God's judgment on the people of the earth who are not followers of Jesus. The severity of the woes foreshadows God's final judgment on unbelievers in Revelation 20:11-15. Within these 3 woes are 7 trumpets, 7 plagues, and 7 bowls. The woes become progressively larger. Part of the first woe focuses on a group of people, likely to be one region. The second woe focuses on a vast proportion of the earth, likely to be 3 regions, and kills a third of mankind in Revelation 9:15 and 18. The third woe encompasses the entire globe. The 3 woes of God's wrath. The first woe occurs immediately after the censer is thrown down as the signal that God's wrath is imminent in Revelation 8:5. The first woe consists of the 5 trumpets in Revelation 8:6-13 and Revelation 9:1-11. Then Revelation 9:12 clarifies that the first woe is past, 2 other woes are yet to come. The second woe is the 6th trumpet, and it is described in Revelation 9:13-21. Also, the 2 witnesses die, are resurrected and raptured, followed by a severe earthquake at this time in Revelation 11:7-13. Immediately after this, it says the second woe has passed, the third woe is coming soon, in Revelation 11:14. The third woe is the 7th trumpet, and it is described in Revelation 11:15-19. The third woe also includes 7 plagues which are described in Revelation 15. In addition, it includes 7 bowls described in Revelation 16. What happens in the first woe? Revelation 8, 6-13 and Revelation 9, 1-12. The first 5 trumpets of the first woe. In Revelation 8:6, John the writer sees that the 7 angels who had the 7 trumpets prepared to sound them. As each angel sounds their trumpet, the earth and its inhabitants are afflicted. There is chaos and devastation everywhere, and no part of the earth is untouched. The way they are listed in Revelation 8, 6-13 suggests they occur in quick succession. Firstly, hail and fire mixed with blood is hurled down on the earth. The consequence is that a third of the earth was burned up, a third of the trees were burned up, and all the green grass was burned up, in Revelation 8:7. It is likely that the hail and fire causes blood to be shed. The loss of life and the terrible devastation across such a vast area of the earth is beyond our imagining. Secondly, something like a huge mountain, all ablaze, was thrown into the sea, which sounds like a supervolcano erupting, with the result being a third of the sea turned into blood, a third of the living creatures in the sea died, and a third of the ships were destroyed, in Revelation 8, 8-9. The tsunamis and debris from the supervolcano causes devastation on a scale that is unprecedented. Thirdly, a great star blazing like a torch fell from the sky on a third of the rivers and on the springs of water, in Revelation 8:10. This may be an asteroid or comet hitting the Earth, or it may be man-made, like a space station or a missile, perhaps a nuclear weapon. John tells us that the name of the star is Wormwood in Revelation 8:11, which means bitterness, and that as a result of the impact, a third of the waters turned bitter, and many people died from the waters that had become bitter, in Revelation 8:11. A man-made nuclear weapon would certainly cause the toxicity of the rivers and springs of water. Fourthly, a third of the sun was struck, a third of the moon, and a third of the stars, so that a third of them turned dark. A third of the day was without light, and also a third of the night, in Revelation 8:12. The days become shorter and the nights become longer and darker because of a darkening of the sun, moon, and stars. The dramatic tension is now raised considerably when John says, "As I watched, I heard an eagle that was flying in mid-air call out in a loud voice, 'Woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth, because of the trumpet blasts about to be sounded by the other 3 angels,' in Revelation 8:13. The word woe, meaning distress and wretchedness, is repeated 3 times for emphasis, as, although the 4 events so far have been devastating for the earth and its people, what is coming with the next 3 trumpets is far worse. The next trumpet blast, the 5th one, is described in Revelation 9, 1-11, and it completes the first woe, in Revelation 9:12. The remaining 2 trumpet blasts referred to in Revelation 8:13, the 6th and 7th ones, each make up the 2nd and 3rd woes, and are discussed in Chapter 8 and Chapter 10, Parts 1 and 2 of this guide. As an aid to understanding Revelation 9, 1-12, I have reordered the verses as follows. In Revelation 9:1, the 5th angel sounded his trumpet. John says he saw a star that had fallen from the sky to the earth. The star was given the key to the shaft of the abyss. This has been interpreted literally, with the star being viewed as an asteroid or comet, perhaps the same one called Wormwood in Revelation 8, 10-11, or it may be another one. It can be said that personification is being used to create the impression of this star helping to administer God's wrath. Another interpretation is that it could be a man-made spaceship or aeroplane that has crash-landed, suggested by Daniel 8, 9-10. Out of one of them came another horn, the Antichrist, which started small but grew in power to the south and to the east and toward the beautiful land, Israel. It grew until it reached the host of the heavens, the stars in the sky, and it threw some of the starry host, the stars, down to the earth and trampled on them. This description of the Antichrist power extending into the host of the heavens, the stars in the sky, connects to the signs and wonders of 2 Thessalonians 2:9 and causing fire to come down from heaven, the sky, to the earth in Revelation 13:13. The starry host, therefore, could be man-made spaceships, space stations, satellites, or aeroplanes, rather than the stars, and linked to this, the star that had fallen from the sky to the earth in Revelation 9:1 could be any one of them that has crash-landed. However, it is important to bear in mind that John the writer is a first-century man describing 21st century technology, and he is using the language and things he knows to describe what he sees. Because the star was given the key in Revelation 9:1, a more accurate interpretation is that this is a set of coordinates. Every key has unique markings that connect it with a particular lock and enable it to open that lock. This star has been given the key to the shaft of the abyss. It has been given some unique markings that connect it to a particular location called the abyss. The word abyss means a deep hole in the ground or a cave, and in this context it has both a literal and a spiritual meaning. It is literally a hole in the ground, a cave, and it is also a place of confinement for Satan in the spirit realm. The shaft in Revelation 9:1 is the tunnel that connects a mine or cavern with the earth's surface. The Antichrist is connected to the abyss in Revelation 17:8. The beast, the Antichrist which you saw, will come up out of the abyss and go to its destruction. This conveys that the Antichrist is in a deep cave or cavern, having taken refuge from the events of the 6th and 7th seals so far, in the type of converted missile silo or cave described in Chapter 6 of this guide. It will be huge, heavily fortified, and luxurious undoubtedly, but it will be opened by the star in Revelation 9:2. The Antichrist is hiding out in this cavern, but he will finally emerge from it for the Battle of Armageddon in Revelation 17:8, which is discussed in Chapter 11 of this guide. The unique markings of the key enable the star to open it, meaning it has been given the coordinates to the abyss, the Antichrist cavern, and the firepower to open it. The coordinates, the key, mean the star is a missile. The coordinates also mean that the star is man-made, not a comet or asteroid, and that this is a deliberate event, a missile attack, and not a crash landing. Given the amount of smoke that blocks out the sun and sky in Revelation 9:2, it is likely that the star is an intercontinental ballistic missile, which would cause smoke and debris on that scale. It also suggests that it is an assassination attempt on the Antichrist's life. This is borne out by the air and ground offensive in response to the star, the deployment of the locusts, who round up a group of people for torture. The Antichrist location in the abyss is opened by the missile attack, but it is not destroyed, however. The only people who would have access to this kind of military hardware would be the regional leaders of the One World Government, and this attack on the Antichrist underground location, the abyss, is an act of rebellion and betrayal against him by one of them. Given that the Antichrist seeks to oppose and replace Jesus, it is ironic that he is now experiencing a counterfeit mirror image of Judas Iscariot's betrayal of Jesus, and the missile strike is the sign of that betrayal, the Judas kiss, in Matthew 26:48-49 and Mark 14:44-45. In response to the missile attack, out of the smoke locusts came down on the earth in Revelation 9:3. Again, John the writer is describing 21st century technology, and he can only describe it based on what he knows. They aren't literal giant locusts, nor are they from outer space. These are helicopters, armed helicopters coming into land out of the smoke. Among them also appear to be Chinook helicopters. Chinooks have a similar color to some types of locusts, and they're the same horizontal shape. In addition, CH-47F Chinooks are transport helicopters that can carry 33 troops. Revelation 9:7-10 gives us more specific details. The locusts look like horses prepared for battle in Revelation 9:7, conveying that they're covered in metal. Also, they had breastplates like breastplates of iron in Revelation 9:9. This conveys that the helicopters are armored. Some of them may be helicopter gunships, a type of attack helicopter that would be used in support of the transport helicopters. Their wings are their rotary blades, and we're even given the sound of them in the air and as they land. The sound of their wings was like the thundering of many horses and chariots rushing into battle in Revelation 9:9. These locust helicopters also contain soldiers that are not human. On their heads they wore something like crowns of gold, and their faces resembled human faces in Revelation 9:7. The fact that their faces resembled human faces is a clear indication that these are not actual living, breathing humans, and that they are androids. They're also wearing helmets. On their heads they wore something like crowns of gold. We learned that their hair was like women's hair, and their teeth were like lions' teeth in Revelation 9:8. Women's hair in the 1st century AD, when John was writing, was dressed and styled very closely to the head, sometimes including a headdress, rather than hanging loosely around the shoulders. The sharp teeth, like lions' teeth, are clearly not human. The androids have power like that of scorpions of the earth in Revelation 9:3, meaning they're carrying stun guns and tasers, as they are of a similar shape and color to the claws and tails of a scorpion, confirmed by the fact that the androids are not allowed to kill anyone in Revelation 9:5. In addition, the androids had tails with stingers like scorpions in Revelation 9:10, which are cattle prods. All of these weapons, the stun guns, tasers, and cattle prods, are being used by the androids on a group of people that have advanced on the shaft of the abyss in order to repel them and round them up to be taken away. What can be inferred is that these people are a rebel force that has advanced on the Antichrist's underground location with a view to assassinating him, having opened his cavern with the missile, the Star. They are intercepted by the androids deployed in helicopters, who taser and stun some of them and round them up using cattle prods before taking them away in the helicopters to detention centers. At the detention centers, the androids torture them for 5 months, and the agony they suffered was like that of the sting of a scorpion when it strikes in Revelation 9:5. This suggests that the androids are using syringes, the sting of a scorpion when it strikes, filled with toxic substances that cause them agony, injections administered repeatedly for 5 months in Revelation 9:5. In addition, the cattle prods, the tails of stingers, like scorpions, are also used to torment people for 5 months in Revelation 9:10. They're being kept alive deliberately in order to be tortured repeatedly. The androids were not allowed to kill them, but only to torture them for 5 months in Revelation 9:5. The repetition of 5 months in connection to the syringes and the cattle prods emphasizes that they are both being used on these people as part of the torture and torment inflicted upon them during this period of time. Their suffering will be so bad that during those days people will seek death but will not find it. They will long to die, but death will elude them in Revelation 9:6. In addition, we learn that these androids have been told not to harm the grass of the earth or any plant or tree, but only those people who did not have the seal of God on their foreheads in Revelation 9:4. This tells us a number of things. The androids are not carrying out a scorched earth mission as they vacate the area. The seal of God on their foreheads means a person is filled with the Holy Spirit. in 2 Corinthians 1:22, Ephesians 1:13-14, and 4:30. A person with the seal of God is a Christian. The androids are not pursuing Christians, only those who did not have the seal of God on their foreheads. What distinguishes a Christian from a non-Christian at this time is the presence or lack of it of the mark. The Holy Spirit, the seal of God, has helped the Christians to resist taking the mark, meaning the androids are pursuing those who have taken the mark. The people that the androids are pursuing will have been loyal to the Antichrist once because they've taken the mark, but they are now rebels against him. The androids know where to find the rebels because the mark provides evidence of where they are in the smoke, which is so intense that the sun and sky were darkened in Revelation 9:2. The mark does not just contain people's identity and bank or payment information. It must also contain information about their location. This is how the androids know where the rebels are and why their helicopters land in such a precise location in the smoke to round them up in Revelation 9:3. The mark contains an active tracking device. The androids find the rebels easily because of the active tracker contained in the mark. Because the Christians have refused to take the mark, it makes them less detectable and harder to find. An invasion of the abyss is being attempted by these rebels after the missile has opened it. The smoke from the missile has given them good cover for a ground force operation to take place in Revelation 9:2. They've been detected by the mark and its active tracking capability despite the intense smoke from the ICBM attack, and they're arrested by the androids who take them away for torture. Furthermore, John the writer also tells us that the locusts had as king over them the angel of the abyss, whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon and in Greek is Apollyon, that is, destroyer, in Revelation 9:11. This king called Abaddon and Apollyon is Satan. He is the fallen angel in Isaiah 14:12 and Luke 10:18, and the destroyer in John 8:44, 10:10, and 1 Peter 5:8. He is mentioned repeatedly in the Old Testament written in Hebrew in Job 26:6, 28:22, and 31:12, Psalm 88:11, and Proverbs 15:11 and 27:20. In each of these verses, the original Hebrew word Abaddon is translated as destruction. Satan is the angel of the abyss because the abyss is a place of confinement for him in the spirit realm. His name is given in both Hebrew and Greek languages, Abaddon and Apollyon, in Revelation 9:11, as they were the two main languages of the first century church at the time when John was writing. It is the Antichrist who has given the order for the locust to be deployed, but Satan is referred to as being their king as a reminder that he is the one who empowers the Antichrist in Revelation 13:2, that he is the one who is behind it all. John is reminding us that Satan is using the Antichrist for his own purposes of destroying mankind, to get back at God for rejecting him from heaven for trying to usurp his throne in Isaiah 14:12-15 and Revelation 12:7-9. The double meaning of the abyss as both a literal cavern in the earth housing the Antichrist and as a place of confinement in the spirit realm for Satan cements the idea of them operating as one unit during the Great Tribulation. In summary, during the events of the sixth and seventh seals so far, the Antichrist has taken refuge in an underground shelter or cave like the ones outlined in Chapter 6 of this guide. A number of people who have taken the mark, likely to be a whole region of nations led by their regional leader, have found life to be horrendous during these events and have started to feel resentful and angry at the Antichrist, blaming him for their misery. This has led to riots, a rebellion against the Antichrist, and now this attempt at a revolution, the ICBM strike and a subsequent ground force operation, which the Antichrist is determined to quell, and he is ruthless. After the devastation of the missile strike and the detection of this attempt at an invasion of the abyss in Revelation 9:2, he launches a counterattack upon these rebels. This is a second assassination attempt on the life of the Antichrist after the fatal wound had been healed in Revelation 13:3. He sends out android soldiers in helicopters to round them up and stun, taser and cattle prod them before taking them away in the helicopters to detention centers to be tortured. No further information is provided about these people, but given what we know of the fate of the martyrs, their executions are inevitable, as is their eternal fate because they have taken the mark in Revelation 14:9-11. The next thing we are told rather ominously is that the first woe is past, two other woes are yet to come in Revelation 9:12, and the second woe is explored in chapter 8 of this guide. Chapter 8: The Seventh Seal, the Second Woe. What happens in the Second Woe in Revelation 9:13-21 and Revelation 11:7-14, the sixth trumpet of the Second Woe? When the sixth angel sounded his trumpet, John the writer hears a voice coming from the four horns of the golden altar that is before God in Revelation 9:13. It is significant that the voice comes from the altar, as it is a place of sacrifice and death, and the four horns symbolize very great power and strength. This is indicative of what emerges in the second woe. The sixth angel who had the trumpet is told to release the four angels who are bound at the great river Euphrates in Revelation 9:14. We also learn that there are four angels who had been kept ready for this very hour, and day and month and year were released to kill a third of mankind in Revelation 9:15. These four angels have been bound by God, restrained until required by him to be used as part of his wrath. The world's population has been reduced significantly since the fourth seal opened, and a quarter of mankind died in Revelation 6:8, and it will have continued to reduce since then. Now, however, a third of the people that are left will be killed in the war of the second woe. As the Antichrist continues to rule the world throughout the Great Tribulation, he goes to war against three of his regional leaders, who are part of his one-world government. It is likely to be because they have decided to rebel against him, as in the first woe. This was prophesied 3 times in Daniel 7. There before me was another horn, a little one, the Antichrist, and 3 of the first horns were uprooted before it, 3 of the regional leaders, in Daniel 7:8. I also wanted to know about the other horn that came up, the Antichrist, before which 3 of them fell, 3 of the regional leaders, in Daniel 7:20. He, the Antichrist, will subdue 3 kings, 3 of the regional leaders, in Daniel 7:24. It is logical that these prophecies refer to the events of the second woe, especially since the size of the army involved is huge. It is made up of 200 million soldiers. The number of the mounted troops was twice 10,000 times 10,000. I heard their number in Revelation 9:16. As it is the Antichrist who rules the world, this army will belong to him. Each of the regional leaders would have access to a large army, but only within their region. It is unclear from Daniel 7 whether they unite against the Antichrist as one force, or whether they rebel against him one by one in turn. It is also likely that one of them was involved in the missile attack of the first woe, as discussed in chapter 7 of this guide. What is clear is that they are completely defeated by the Antichrist. Their defeat is repeated 3 times in Daniel 7, as we have seen, to emphasize the Antichrist's victory over them and to confirm that it will happen. Chillingly, he will stop at nothing and use any means necessary to eradicate opposition and to make an example of them. In doing so, he kills a third of mankind in Revelation 9:18, which will include civilians, as that number is so large. As we will see, he even uses chemical weapons on them, which lead to an agonizing and horrific death. A notable aspect of this enormous army is that they appear suddenly in Revelation 9:16 as soon as the four angels are released in Revelation 9:15. There is no mention of this army being gathered, like the kings in Revelation 16:14 and 16, and the kings of the earth and their armies gathered together in Revelation 19:19, indicating a great amassing of troops before a battle starts. This would take time and involve logistics, strategy, and planning, also conveyed by the repetition of the verb gathered. What is implied by the suddenness of the appearance of 200 million soldiers in Revelation 9:16 is that they are not human and are humanoid robots instead. John the writer goes on to describe these soldiers in Revelation 9:17. The horses and riders I saw in my vision looked like this. Their breastplates were fiery red, dark blue, and yellow as sulphur. The heads of the horses resembled the heads of lions, and out of their mouths came fire, smoke, and sulphur. These soldiers, riders, are mobilized, mounted in Revelation 9:16, and they are in armored vehicles, their breastplates, armed with weapons at the front and the rear. The power of the horses was in their mouths and in their tails, for their tails were like snakes, having heads with which they inflict injury in Revelation 9:19. These details connote armored fighting vehicles, AFV, which have both armor and weapons and are used in combat. As these vehicles have tails, like snakes, having heads with which they inflict injury, their appearance suggests tanks, assault guns, or self-propelled artillery, rather than armored cars, armored personnel carriers, or infantry fighting vehicles, which have a different shape. Images of Thailand's light tank Stingray of 1984 even seem to match this description. Again, John uses the language of his day and what he knows to describe what he sees. It is feasible that Joel 2 could also be a description of this humanoid robot army, as discussed in Chapter 2 of this guide. The armor on the soldiers and their vehicles in Revelation 9:17 is colored red, blue, and yellow. These are not the colors of camouflage, and clearly this army is not embedded into the terrain engaged in localized battles. Instead, they are en masse in vehicles displaying distinctive colors, and they are on the offensive. Their vehicles emit fire, smoke, and sulphur in Revelation 9:17-18, which suggests different types of weapons that already exist and have been used for over 100 years, rather than being a new technology that is yet to be invented. The colors of fire, smoke, and sulphur are similar to the colors of their armor, suggesting this huge army is one that especially deploys these particular weapons, and their colors identify them as such. The phrase fire, smoke, and sulphur is repeated in Revelation 9:17-18 to emphasize their devastation. The use of fire suggests flamethrowers and other incendiary weapons that use materials such as napalm, magnesium powder, and white phosphorus. Weapons of this kind were first used in January 1915 during the First World War against civilians, when incendiary bombs were dropped on coastal towns in the east of England. They were used extensively in the Second World War, notably during the British and American bombing of Dresden in 1945. Smoke is also caused by white phosphorus munitions, which were first used by Irish nationalist arsonists in the 19th century. They were developed by the British as white phosphorus grenades in late 1916 during the First World War, and this expanded to white phosphorus mortar bombs, shells, and rockets. White phosphorus munitions were used extensively during the Second World War and have been used since then in the Vietnam War and the Falklands War, for example. As well as being useful to create smoke screens to hide military activity and positions, they are used as markers to designate targets. They are also used against human targets in tunnels, for example, as they burn up the oxygen and suffocate whoever is inside. The use of sulfur as a weapon suggests the use of chemical weapons, and it may be a reference to mustard gas, also known as sulfur mustard. Mustard gas comprises a mist of tiny droplets of a yellow-brown, thick, sticky liquid, despite its name, that smells like mustard, garlic, or horseradish. There is no cure or antidote for it, and a person's only defense against it is to cover up their airways and skin. It was first used in July 1917 by the German army near Ypres in Belgium during the First World War. Other chemical weapons were also used during the First World War as early as October 1914, and it has been estimated that chemical weapons killed 90,000 and injured 1 million people in that war overall. Despite treaties banning their use since that time, they have been used by a number of different nations, either against an enemy nation, such as during the Iran-Iraq War of 1980 to 1988, causing a reported 100,000 casualties, or by a leader against their own people. This occurred numerous times during the civil war in Syria from 2012 onwards and as recently as 2018. Chemical weapons cause horrific injuries to great numbers of people in a short space of time. In general terms, the greater the amount a person is exposed to results in the greater amount of injury to them, leading to an agonizing death. If a person is exposed to a smaller amount whilst being agonizing, they may recover, although they may be permanently affected and their life expectancy shortened. In addition, chemical weapons are known to be difficult to deploy, as they can affect those deploying them as much as their intended victims, so it is likely that the soldiers in this description are humanoid robots, as they would be completely unaffected. Clearly, the Antichrist will stop at nothing to retain his power and position as head of the one world government. He will use any means possible, even weapons of this nature, to achieve it, and he kills a third of mankind in Revelation 9:18, which is a staggering concept. This number suggests many civilians are killed, as well as rebel forces under the leadership of 3 regional leaders. Despite this, the rest of mankind who were not killed by these plagues still did not repent of the work of their hands. They did not stop worshipping demons and idols of gold, silver, bronze, stone, and wood, idols that cannot see or hear or walk. Nor did they repent of their murders, their magic arts, their sexual immorality, or their thefts in Revelation 9:20-21. These people refused to turn away from materialism and consumerism, the worship of things made of gold, silver, bronze, stone, and wood. They also refused to repent of murder, witchcraft, and the occult, known as magic arts, sexual sin, and theft. No matter what negative experience is occurring, they cling on to this behavior and are committed to their own destruction. They remain worshippers of the Antichrist and members of the false church Babylon, which is a dwelling for demons, in Revelation 18:2. Revelation 11:14 announces the end of the second woe, but immediately before that, the 2 witnesses come to the end of their time on earth in Revelation 11:7-14, and we know they were given 1260 days to prophesy in Revelation 11:3. This tells us that the end of the second woe is at the end of the Great Tribulation, and the third woe is the culmination of God's wrath, followed by the Battle of Armageddon. The second woe closes with the Antichrist killing the 2 witnesses. Now when they have finished their testimony, the beast that comes up from the abyss will attack them and overpower and kill them. Up until this point, they have had miraculous powers to repel any attack in Revelation 11:5-6, but Satan through the Antichrist finally martyrs them in Revelation 11:7. We also learn that they are killed in Jerusalem, and their bodies lie in the public square of Jerusalem, where also their Lord was crucified, like trophies in Revelation 11:8. We are told what has become of Jerusalem since Israel escaped from the Antichrist 3.5 years earlier, whereby it has been trampled by the Gentiles in Revelation 11:2 since then. It is figuratively called Sodom and Egypt in Revelation 11:8. This means it is symbolically Sodom, destroyed for its sexual sin in Genesis 19:1-29, and it is symbolically Egypt, a place of demon worship and the worship of their ruler Pharaoh as a god in the Old Testament. This conveys that Jerusalem has become a center of worship of the Antichrist and of demon worship, and it is full of sexual sin. Following their deaths for 3.5 days, some from every people, tribe, language, and nation will gaze on their bodies and refuse them burial in Revelation 11:9. This grisly display of their bodies will be viewed globally on social and mass media, and probably live streamed. This not only tells us what happens to their bodies, that they are on public display as trophies of the Antichrist, but also it tells us how desensitized people have become to seeing dead bodies lying in the street by this time, to the point that it has become normal to see footage of dead bodies on social and mass media around the world. Moreover, they gaze at them, meaning they take a long, lingering look, not a quick glance. Seeing dead bodies will have become a bizarre fascination for people at this time. It is clear that today's cultural norms about respect for the dead will be long gone by this time, and that the boundaries and taboos about dead bodies will have broken down completely. Evidently, society across the world will have degenerated under the rule of the Antichrist to the point that the inhabitants of the earth will gloat over them and will celebrate by sending each other gifts, because these two prophets had tormented those who live on the earth in Revelation 11:10. In a perversion of the Christmas celebration of Jesus' birth, people across the world will give one another gifts to celebrate death, the deaths of the two witnesses. They also gloat over them, taking delight in their deaths and celebrating it. These people have felt tormented by the two witnesses because they were being confronted by their own sin and their impending fate, and were powerless to stop them doing so. It also implies ironically that they think their torment is now over as the two witnesses are dead. Their delighted celebrations are cut short, however, when after 3.5 days the breath of life from God entered them, and they stood on their feet, and terror struck those who saw them, in Revelation 11:11. The two witnesses are brought back to life, resurrected by God, causing absolute terror to those who see it happening. It mirrors both the resurrection of Jesus in the Gospels and also the way Adam was first brought to life in Genesis 2:7. In addition, Revelation 11:12 describes how the two witnesses are raptured in front of all those who hate them, joining the true Christian church that was raptured some time before. The rapture is a supernatural event when the true Christians on the earth, the Christian church that has remained faithful to Jesus and his word, disappear and are taken up into heaven to safety by Jesus. They completely vanish, and it will happen very suddenly with no warning. The rapture is discussed further in the prologue to this guide. It can be understood that the rapture of the two witnesses marks the end of God's call to people to turn to him, and the end of any witnessing to them about Jesus. The full number of Christian converts are all in heaven in Revelation 15:2, before the third woe takes place, before the 7 last plagues of God's wrath are poured out. As John tells us, I saw in heaven another great and marvelous sign, 7 angels with the 7 last plagues, last because with them God's wrath is completed. And I saw what looked like a sea of glass glowing with fire, and standing beside the sea, those who had been victorious over the beast and its image, and over the number of its name, in Revelation 15:1-2. In addition, the 144,000 are shown to be with Jesus in Revelation 14, 1-5. Next, at that very hour, there was a severe earthquake, and a tenth of the city collapsed. 7,000 people were killed in the earthquake, and the survivors were terrified and gave glory to the God of heaven in Revelation 11:13. Jerusalem suffers a huge, devastating, and deadly earthquake after the two witnesses are resurrected and raptured, which terrifies those who survive, to the point that they gave glory to the God of heaven. We learn in Zechariah 12:14 that the people of Israel will be in Jerusalem when the 1260 days in the wilderness are over, in Revelation 12:6, and therefore it can be understood that they are the survivors of the earthquake who gave glory to the God of heaven. It means those who die in the earthquake are the unbelievers, the worshippers of the Antichrist. The earthquake serves to remove the unbelievers who have trampled on Jerusalem in Luke 21:24 for 42 months in Revelation 11:2, because the times of the Gentiles in Jerusalem have now been fulfilled in Luke 21:24. What happens to Israel is explored in chapter 9. The writer John tells us that the second woe has passed, the third woe is coming soon in Revelation 11:14. This is discussed in Chapter 10, Parts 1 and 2 of this guide. Chapter 9. What happens to Israel? As discussed in Chapter 1, Part 1, and the timeline chapter of this guide, it is the Antichrist signing of the 7-year covenant in Daniel 9:27 with Israel that initiates the tribulation. It will be a deal involving Jordan that gives Israel access to the Temple Mount, so Israel can restart the sacrifice and offering. Prior to that, the Antichrist will deceive Israel into believing that he is their friend, an ally who can be trusted. He will be very convincing and will demonstrate loyalty and friendship in an active way to the nation of Israel. Moreover, facilitating the return of the Temple Mount to Israel via a covenant will cement this belief, and they will be unaware of who he really is. The sacrifice and offering in Daniel 9:27 will restart about 10 weeks later, as outlined in the timeline chapter of this guide. It will continue for about 3.5 years until the Antichrist stops it, breaking his covenant with Israel. At the same time, he will set up the abomination that causes desolation in Daniel 9:27 and Matthew 24:15, the speaking image of himself in Revelation 13:15 in the temple, and will order Israel and everyone else to worship him, not God, in 2 Thessalonians 2:4. It is only then that Israel will realize that he has completely deceived and betrayed them. Having warned the people of Israel about it in Matthew 24:15-16, Jesus also tells Israel exactly what to do when it happens. Let no one on the housetop go down to take anything out of the house. Let no one in the field go back to get their cloak. How dreadful it will be in those days for pregnant women and nursing mothers. Pray that your flight will not take place in winter or on the Sabbath, for then there will be great distress, unequalled from the beginning of the world until now, and never to be equalled again, in Matthew 24:17-21. Jesus is speaking specifically to Israel, denoted by the word Sabbath, and his words about these events are also in Mark 13:14-19. Revelation 11:2 tells us that Jerusalem will then be given to the Gentiles, non-Jews, for 42 months, or 3.5 years from this point. Revelation 12:14-16 tells us what happens to Israel once the abomination occurs in the temple. They are given the 2 wings of a great eagle, a metaphor for their escape by aeroplane via a fleet of aircraft. They go to a secret location, to the place prepared for them in the wilderness, where they would be taken care of. Israel remains there for 3.5 years, for a time, times, and half a time, safe from Satan and the Antichrist, out of the serpent's reach, in Revelation 14:14. Revelation 12:6 also explains that Israel fled into the wilderness to a place prepared for them by God, where they might be taken care of for 1260 days. These verses reassure Israel that God has gone before them, preparing a place of sanctuary in advance for them, ready for this time of great peril. The phrase "the place prepared for Israel" appears twice in Revelation 12:6 and 14 to confirm this. In addition, the repetition of "taken care of" is to reassure Israel emphatically that they will not be alone fending for themselves in the wilderness. God will look after them throughout this time, and they will not be vanquished, just as he cared for them when he brought them out of Egypt and into the wilderness, as recorded in the book of Exodus. Israel's future escape into the wilderness and being taken care of by God in Revelation 12:6 is a parallel to their deliverance from Egypt, in that they will be delivered out of the hand of Satan by God at this time and kept safe by him. Earlier in Revelation 12:1-5, John is shown a great sign in heaven in Revelation 12:1. It is a vision of a metaphorical woman, Israel, giving birth to a son, Jesus, whom the metaphorical dragon, Satan, wants to destroy. But he, Jesus, is snatched up to God in Revelation 12:5, alluding to his ascension in Acts 1:9. The woman is understood to be a metaphor for Israel rather than an actual human being, due to Joseph's dream in Genesis 37:9. At that time, Israel comprised Joseph, his brothers, and his parents. Joseph had a dream about them, and it is explained in Genesis 37:10 that they are the metaphorical sun and moon and 11 stars of the dream. In John's vision, the woman is clothed with sun, has the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars in Revelation 12:1, symbolizing Israel. Israel metaphorically gave birth to Jesus in the sense that Jesus came from Israel, having been born in Bethlehem of Judea, and he lived as a Jewish man who followed Jewish customs, as shown in the 4 Gospels. He also remains the Lion of the tribe of Judah in Revelation 5:5. The dragon is explained as being Satan in Revelation 12:9 and 22. This description also contains a vision of an enormous red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns on its heads in Revelation 12:3. This was explained in Chapter 1, Part 1 of this guide as being Satan empowering the Antichrist and the regional leaders of his one-world government. This vision is placed deliberately within the description of the woman, Israel, giving birth to Jesus, because the Antichrist, empowered by Satan, seeks to oppose and replace Jesus and be worshipped as God. Satan, the dragon, could not devour Jesus in Revelation 12:4, who came from Israel, so he seeks to oppose him and replace him with the Antichrist instead, and to destroy his people Israel and his followers, the Christians. Satan wants to be worshipped as God in Isaiah 14:13-14, which he achieves vicariously through the Antichrist worship of the Great Tribulation. He cannot destroy God, so he tries to destroy Israel and Christians instead, to harm those whom God loves. Satan particularly hates Israel because they are God's chosen people in Deuteronomy 7:6. And it was Israel who gave birth to Jesus in Revelation 12:5. This is why there is so much anti-Semitism in the world. It is caused by Satan deceiving people into hating the people of Israel and trying to destroy Israel on his behalf. Revelation 12:7-9 also tells us how Satan came to be on the earth after war broke out in heaven, tying in with Isaiah 14:12-15 and Luke 10:18. It came about due to the angel Michael, who fought against the dragon Satan in Revelation 12:7. Michael is an archangel who watches over Israel and fights against Satan to defend the people of Israel, explained in Daniel 10:13, where he is described as Michael, one of the chief princes, meaning one of the archangels. In Daniel 10:21, he is Michael, your prince, and the word your is referring to Israel. In Daniel 12:1, he is Michael, the great prince who protects your people, Israel. Michael and his angels fought against Satan during the war in heaven and overpowered him, leading to Satan being cast out and hurled to the earth and his angels with him in Revelation 12:7-9. Satan is filled with fury because he knows that his time is short in Revelation 12:12. After Israel has escaped to the wilderness, we learn that from his mouth the serpent spewed water like a river to overtake the woman and sweep her away with the torrent. But the earth helped the woman by opening its mouth and swallowing the river that the dragon had spewed out of his mouth in Revelation 12:15-16. Water is a metaphor for people in Revelation 17:15, and this metaphor and simile of water like a river is the pursuit of Israel during its escape by the Antichrist military forces. The metaphor of the earth opening its mouth suggests that an earthquake halts and destroys their pursuers, in the same way that Korah, Dathan, and Abiram were destroyed when the earth opened its mouth and swallowed them in Numbers 16:27-33. Israel's successful escape from their pursuers also echoes their escape from Egypt in Exodus 12:13, and it mirrors the parting of the Red Sea that destroyed Pharaoh's army who were pursuing them in Exodus 14. Because Israel's flight in Matthew 24:20 to the wilderness is so sudden, they will have to leave wearing the clothes they are literally standing in Matthew 24:15-18. They will not have had time to get a blanket, pack cooking utensils, or even pick up a toothbrush. Yet they will live there for 3.5 years, being cared for by God. He will feed them, provide water and shelter, and attend to their needs, as he did once before in the wilderness when they came out of Egypt. God provided a pillar of cloud as a guide by day and a pillar of fire at night to give them light in Exodus 13:21, manna and quail to eat in Exodus 16:11-15, and water from a rock to drink in Exodus 17:6. In addition, their clothes did not wear out, and their feet did not swell during these 40 years in Deuteronomy 8:4. Seeing how God cared for Israel in the past in Exodus, we can only imagine how he will care for them again in the future. It has also been interpreted that Ezekiel 20:34-38 refers to Israel's time in the wilderness. As I judged your ancestors in the wilderness of the land of Egypt, so I will judge you, declares the sovereign Lord, in Ezekiel 20:36. This time of judgment by God will be face to face in Ezekiel 20:35. After 1260 days pass by from the day of the abomination in the temple, the testimony of the two witnesses ends, as we have seen in Revelation 11:3. The end of 1260 days is also the end of Israel's time in a secret location being cared for by God in Revelation 12:6. No specific information is given in Revelation about Israel after 1260 days. However, in Revelation 10:5-7, John the writer is told by an angel that there will be no more delay in Revelation 10:6. And that in the days when the seventh angel is about to sound his trumpet, the mystery of God will be accomplished, just as he announced to his servants the prophets in Revelation 10:7. In the Bible, the word mystery means a secret that has been kept hidden by God, as in 1 Corinthians 15:51, for example. Revelation 10:5-7 conveys that God has a secret. that he has already told his prophets about it, that just before the seventh trumpet sounds, he will reveal it, having delayed revealing it up until that moment. The fact that God told his servants, the prophets, this secret in Revelation 10:7 means that it is something to do with Israel. This is how these events unfold. The two witnesses are martyred, resurrected, and raptured at the end of 1260 days of prophesying in Revelation 11:3. Israel is in the wilderness for 1260 days in Revelation 12:6 and will start the journey back to Jerusalem on the same day that the two witnesses are martyred. Zechariah 12:10-11 and 14:1-2 make it clear that the people of Israel are in Jerusalem at the time of Jesus' return. The times of the Gentiles in Jerusalem will have been fulfilled in Luke 21:24, as it will now be 42 months in Revelation 11:2 since the abomination that causes desolation in Matthew 24:15 was set up by the Antichrist in the temple. As suggested at the end of chapter 8 of this guide, the great earthquake that kills 7,000 people in Revelation 11:13 after the rapture of the two witnesses removes the unbelievers from Jerusalem, and the survivors will be the returning people of Israel who give glory to the God of heaven in Revelation 11:13. After this, the seventh angel sounded his trumpet, and there were loud voices in heaven announcing the reign of Jesus over the world in Revelation 11:15. This implies that God has now revealed his secret to Israel. He has revealed to them the true identity of Jesus as his Son and their Messiah. Zechariah the prophet gives detailed and specific information about this, which John the writer confirms in Revelation 1:7. Zechariah conveys that God will pour out on the house of David and the inhabitants of Jerusalem a spirit of grace and supplication. They will look on me, the one they have pierced, and they will mourn for him as one mourns for an only child, and grieve bitterly for him as one grieves for a firstborn son. On that day the weeping in Jerusalem will be as great as the weeping of Hadad Rimmon in the plain of Megiddo. The land will mourn, each clan by itself, with their wives by themselves, in Zechariah 12:10-12. At this time, the armies of the world gather and attack Jerusalem in Joel 3:10-12 and Zechariah 14:2. This is at the Battle of Armageddon, which is explored in chapter 11 of this guide. When this happens, everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. For on Mount Zion and in Jerusalem there will be deliverance, as the Lord has said, even among the survivors whom the Lord calls, in Joel 2:32. When Jerusalem is attacked and captured in Zechariah 14:2 by the armies of the world, the people of Israel will call out to Jesus as their Messiah, and he will save them. Half of the city will go into exile, but the rest of the people will not be taken from the city. Then the Lord will go out and fight against those nations as he fights on a day of battle. On that day his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives, east of Jerusalem, and the Mount of Olives will be split in two from east to west, forming a great valley, with half of the mountain moving north and half moving south. You will flee by my mountain valley, for it will extend to Azel. You will flee as you fled from the earthquake in the days of Uzziah, king of Judah. Then the Lord my God will come, and all the holy ones with him, in Zechariah 14:2-5. This earthquake is very likely to be the same one that occurs in Revelation 16:18-19 as part of the third woe, when the great city Jerusalem split into three parts. Both earthquakes match the description that no earthquake like it has ever occurred since mankind has been on earth, so tremendous was the quake, in Revelation 16:18. What happens to the people of Israel in Jerusalem during this time when they are attacked by all the nations of the world, as described in Zechariah 14, is horrifying. Yet it is important to remember and hold on to the outcome that when they call out to him, Jesus does come back for them in Joel 2:32. The people of Israel are saved by Jesus in Joel 3:16, Zechariah 14:3 and 5. They are among the survivors after the tribulation is over and Jesus has won the battle of Armageddon in Joel 2:27, 2:32 and 3:20. The prophets of the Old Testament make it absolutely clear that the people of Israel will be part of the millennial kingdom and with God forever. They will live on the earth, as will the resurrected martyr church in Revelation 20:4. It is understood that they will rule, repopulate, and rebuild the earth during the 1,000-year reign of Jesus and will live in the New Jerusalem thereafter. In Isaiah 59:20-21 and 60, Jeremiah 31:33-34, 32:38-41 and 33:8, Ezekiel 11:19-20, 36:26-28 and 33-38, Joel 3:16-18 and 20, and Zechariah 14:10-11 and 16-21. As well as saving his people Israel, Jesus destroys all of the armies that have gathered to attack Jerusalem. Let the nations be roused, let them advance into the valley of Jehoshaphat, for there I will sit to judge all the nations on every side. Swing the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Come, trample the grapes, for the winepress is full and the vats overflow. So great is their wickedness. Multitudes, multitudes in the valley of decision, for the day of the Lord is near in the valley of decision. The sun and moon will be darkened, and the stars will no longer shine. The Lord will roar from Zion and thunder from Jerusalem. The earth and the heavens, the sky will tremble. But the Lord will be a refuge for his people, a stronghold for the people of Israel, in Joel 3:12-16. The metaphor of the grapes and the winepress links to the descriptions of the two harvests in Revelation 14:14-20, confirming the grape harvest is part of the Battle of Armageddon. The judgment of the nations on every side in Joel 3:12 connects to the sheep and goats judgment in Matthew 25:31-46. Several places are mentioned in these prophecies in Joel 2 and 3, which has caused debate amongst Bible scholars about the exact location of the Battle of Armageddon. The Valley of Jehoshaphat, also named the Valley of Decision in Joel 3:14, is believed by some, but not all biblical scholars, to be the Kidron Valley, to the east of Jerusalem. Mount Zion is a hill to the south of Jerusalem, although the Temple Mount has also been called by this name in the past. The name Zion refers to Jerusalem and to Israel itself. In addition, the people of Israel will be in Jerusalem in Zechariah 12:10-12. The Mount of Olives is a mountain ridge to the east of Jerusalem. Armageddon is mentioned in Revelation 16:16 and is a place in northern Israel that is also called Megiddo. Clearly, all of these places are significant at the time of Jesus' return, and it can be understood that when the armies of the whole world gather to attack Jerusalem, they will be assembled for battle across all of them. This will be a vast and extensive field army or group of field armies comprising soldiers from every region and every nation of the world, with their regional leaders acting as generals. They will be under the overall direction of the Antichrist, who is accompanied by the false prophet in Revelation 19:20. As these armies will not all fit into Jerusalem or Armageddon at the same time, It is logical that they will be encamped in various places in Israel, hence the range of places named in connection with the end-time battle. Revelation 19:11-21 also describes the Battle of Armageddon, and this is discussed in chapter 11 of this guide.